Silence, language of wisdom. Have you ever noticed how loud the world has become? Everywhere you turn, something is demanding your attention: notifications, messages, advertisements, voices layered on top of voices, until even silence becomes uncomfortable. But let me ask you this: have you ever been in a room full of people, and still felt completely alone? Have you ever stared at your screen, scrolling endlessly, feeling empty, yet unable to stop? We live in a world obsessed with noise. We chase sounds, opinions, applause, and in the chaos, we've forgotten something ancient, something sacred. We've forgotten silence. Not the awkward silence of a failed conversation, not the silence that follows heartbreak or rejection, but the silence that monks protect, the silence that trees whisper, the silence that exists before thought, before speech, before self, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any word, a silence that holds presence, that holds healing, that holds truth. You see, in Buddhism, silence is not emptiness, it's fullness. It's the space where clarity is born, where the heart can finally breathe. The great mystic Rumi once said, "Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers." So in this journey, together, we will rediscover this lost language, the language of stillness, of presence, of wisdom, because maybe, just maybe, the loudest sound your soul has ever longed to hear is not sound at all. Maybe it's silence. Welcome to this sacred exploration, silence, the language of wisdom. Let's begin. Let me take you back to a time before smartphones, before cities, before the world became so loud. High in the misty hills of ancient India, there lived a boy named Ananda. He wasn't a sage, he didn't wear robes, he didn't seek enlightenment, he was simply curious. Every afternoon, after helping his father in the fields, Ananda would wander down to a quiet riverbank just outside his village. He would sit there for hours, listening, not to voices, not to teachings, but to the way the water moved, to the hush of wind brushing through the tall grass, to the sound of his own breath as it slowed down and settled. One day, he asked the village monk a question: "Master, why doesn't the river speak?" The old monk looked at him gently, his eyes smiling. He said, "It does, my child, you just haven't learned its language yet." Ananda blinked. But how can something speak without words? The monk walked over, knelt beside him, and placed his hand into the river. Ripples danced outward, the water shimmered in silence, and then he spoke. Wisdom has many languages, but the purest, the oldest, the most powerful of them all, is silence. That moment would live inside Ananda for the rest of his life, and though he didn't fully understand it then, something inside him shifted, because in that silence, he heard more truth than in all the words he'd ever known. You see, we are taught to speak, taught to explain, to persuade, to convince, but no one teaches us to listen, to truly be still. And so, in the noise of growing up, in the race to be successful, in the constant rush to be heard, validated, seen, we forget the ancient tongue of the universe, the language of trees, of stars, of monks in stillness, the language of the awakened heart. Silence. In this chapter, Ananda represents us all. We've been sitting at the riverbank of our lives, wondering why peace doesn't speak to us. But maybe, just maybe, peace has been speaking all along, we just haven't remembered how to hear it. What is silence? Is it simply the absence of noise, the quiet between words, the stillness in a room when the conversation pauses? Many of us think of silence as something empty, a void, a blank space that needs to be filled, a moment of awkwardness, where something is missing. But in the world of Buddhism, silence is not the absence of anything, it is the presence of everything. Let me explain. In our modern lives, silence often feels uncomfortable. We're constantly surrounded by sound, by information, by distractions. From the moment we wake up, the world fills our ears, the hum of the alarm clock, the chime of notifications, the buzz of activity. It's as though we fear the quiet, like it's something we need to avoid. But in Buddhist teachings, silence isn't something to fear, it's something to embrace. The Buddha himself understood this well. There's a story from the Pali Canon, a moment where a wandering philosopher named Vakagata came to the Buddha, seeking answers. He asked the Buddha, does the self exist, or does it not exist? A question so deep, so vast, that it carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. Yet, the Buddha remained silent. Why? Because to answer that question directly would have been to fall into the traps of either slash or thinking. To say the self exists would lead him down the path of eternalism. To say the self does not exist would lead him to nihilism. Neither answer would reveal the truth. So instead, the Buddha said nothing. He let the silence speak for itself. In his silence, the Buddha showed us that some questions are not meant to be answered with words. Some truths cannot be spoken. They must be experienced. They must be felt. You see, silence is not just the absence of noise. It is the space where clarity arises. It is the place where insight is born. Silence is not an empty void. It is the fullness of presence, the heart of awareness. When you let go of the noise, when you release the need to constantly fill every moment with sound, what you discover is that silence is alive. It is full of answers. It is full of truth. It is full of wisdom. And once you understand this, once you begin to see silence, not as emptiness, but as fullness, you begin to understand how powerful it truly is. You begin to see that when you sit in silence, you are not alone. You are connected to everything, to the world, to your deepest self, to the wisdom of the ages. So the next time you find yourself surrounded by noise, ask yourself this: what does the silence have to say to me? And listen closely, because in that silence, the universe might just reveal its greatest secret. There's a moment in the Buddha's life that has always intrigued me. It's not a moment where he gave a profound teaching. It's not a moment where he performed a miracle. It's a moment when the Buddha chose silence, a silence that carried more weight than any words he could have spoken. One day, a wandering philosopher named Vakagata approached the Buddha with a question: Master, does the self exist? Or does it not exist? Now, this is a question that philosophers have been grappling with for centuries, a question that many would jump to answer, perhaps with theories, definitions, and intellectual debates. But what did the Buddha do? He remained silent. No words. No response. Now, most of us would think, why didn't he answer? Was he being evasive? Did he not know the answer? But the Buddha's silence was not a refusal to answer. It was, in fact, the most profound answer he could have given. You see, the Buddha understood something deeply. The nature of existence, the true nature of the self, is beyond words. It cannot be captured by intellectual thought alone. To say the self exists would imply something eternal, a permanent identity that never changes. To say the self doesn't exist would imply total annihilation, a complete lack of any lasting identity. But the Buddha knew that the truth was far beyond either extreme. It was in the space between the two. It was in the silence. His silence was a teaching in itself, a reminder that not everything can be neatly explained. Some truths must be experienced, felt, and lived. They cannot be reduced to words or concepts. In the silence, the Buddha invited Vakagata, and all of us, to go beyond intellectual understanding and into a deeper realm of knowing. He showed us that silence is not an absence. It is a presence that carries the fullness of wisdom. When we stop talking, when we stop analyzing, we create space for something greater than words to arise. We make room for insight, for clarity, and for peace, and it's in this silence that we can truly begin to understand, not with our minds alone, but with our hearts, our intuition, our being. In Buddhism, there is a practice called noble silence. It's not just the act of not speaking, it's the practice of creating space, space where thoughts, desires, and distractions settle down, and the deeper truths of life can be heard. Because sometimes, when we let go of the noise, we can hear what we were meant to hear all along. The Buddha's silence wasn't a withdrawal from the world. It was a way of seeing the world more clearly, a way of understanding life in its truest form, beyond words, beyond labels, beyond concepts. The next time you find yourself lost in the chaos of thoughts, remember the Buddha's silence. And in that moment, pause, let go of the need to grasp, let go of the need to label, let go of the need to explain, and just listen, because in that silence, you will find more than you ever could in 1,000 words. Let's pause for a moment, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and feel the silence around you. What do you hear? You might think there's nothing to hear, but listen closely. The world is speaking in a language beyond sound. It's speaking in the silence between your thoughts. It's speaking in the stillness of your breath. You see, the mind is like a lake. On a calm day, the water is clear. You can see all the way to the bottom. But when the water is disturbed, when the winds of thought stir it up, the lake becomes muddy, the clarity is lost. This is how the mind works. In our daily lives, we are bombarded with thoughts about the past, thoughts about the future. Thoughts about what we need to do, what we should have done, thoughts about what others think of us, thoughts, and more thoughts. The mind is never still, it's like a whirlwind, spinning and spinning, but in stillness, in silence, there is clarity. There is a profound truth in the practice of meditation, a truth we often forget. In the stillness of the mind, wisdom arises. This is the essence of Buddhist practice. The mind is not something to be conquered, but something to be calmed. The goal isn't to stop thinking altogether, but to let the thoughts settle, like the ripples of water after a stone has been thrown in. When the mind becomes still, we begin to see the world as it truly is. Not through the distorted lens of ego, of desire, of fear, but through the lens of wisdom. In that stillness, we connect to something much deeper than our surface thoughts. We connect to the timeless wisdom that is within us all, the wisdom that is beyond concepts, the wisdom that cannot be spoken. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh once said, "The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment." This is the still mind, the mind that is present, the mind that is aware, not lost in distractions or worries, but deeply rooted in the now. When we practice silence, when we create space for stillness, we give the mind a chance to rest, and in that rest, the clarity of true wisdom shines through. It's not a wisdom that comes from books, not a wisdom that can be taught, it's a wisdom that arises from within. A wisdom that is always there, waiting to be uncovered, and when we cultivate this stillness, we begin to see the world differently. We begin to understand the interconnectedness of all things. We begin to feel the deeper truth of life itself. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by the noise, the next time your mind feels like a storm, remember the stillness of the lake, remember the silence beneath the surface, and allow yourself to rest in that stillness, because in that silence, true wisdom will find you. We've explored silence as a profound spiritual practice, as a tool for deep meditation and wisdom. But what about the silence in our everyday life? What about the moments between the rush, the noise, and the chaos of our daily routines? In our modern world, we are often told that to be productive, we need to be constantly engaged, constantly active, constantly doing. We check our phones, we check our email, we check our notifications, we make calls, we schedule meetings, we fill every second of the day with something to do. But in doing all this, we forget one simple truth: there is wisdom in the spaces between. Think about the times you've been walking down the street, when suddenly, the world seems to slow down. You hear the rustling of the leaves in the trees, you feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, you hear the faint hum of life all around you, yet there is a quietness in it, and in that moment, everything feels just right. That's the silence I'm talking about. It's not a grand moment of enlightenment, but a simple moment of presence, a moment where we stop and truly see the world around us. The beauty of silence in everyday life is that it doesn't require us to go to a mountaintop or sit for hours in meditation. It can be found in the small, everyday moments, the moments we often overlook. It's there in the sound of the coffee brewing in the morning. It's in the brief pause before answering a question, when we take a deep breath and listen. It's in the space between two friends sharing a quiet look, no words needed. It's in the brief moment of stillness before you close your eyes at night. In Buddhist teachings, there is a concept known as mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in each moment, of paying attention to the ordinary things we do every day with full awareness. When we are mindful, we invite silence into our lives in the most natural way. We create space to appreciate the world around us, to listen deeply, to be fully present. Take a moment right now, wherever you are, to notice the silence that exists around you. Is it in the sound of your own breath? Is it in the pause between thoughts? Is it in the moment of stillness as you listen to the world? even in the busiest of days, silence is there, waiting for us to notice it, to welcome it. To find peace in it, you don't have to escape the noise of life to find silence, you don't have to run away from the demands of the world, you simply need to slow down, to breathe, to be aware, and when you do, you'll realize that silence isn't something you have to seek, it's something that's always been there, waiting for you to notice it, waiting for you to rest in it. So today, let's practice this simple art: pause, breathe, and find the silence in the ordinary, because that's where true peace lies. Have you ever experienced a moment where everything around you went quiet, and in that stillness, you felt a sudden shift within you, a shift so profound that it left you wondering, what just happened? How did I go from feeling lost, confused, or overwhelmed, to feeling at peace, to feeling like something inside me has transformed? That's the power of silence, and believe me when I say, it is transformative. In Buddhism, we understand that the mind is like a clouded sky, it's filled with thoughts, worries, desires, and distractions, clouds that obscure the sun of our true nature. But when we create space for silence, when we cultivate stillness, we begin to clear the clouds. We begin to allow the sunlight of wisdom, compassion, and clarity to shine through. It's like this: have you ever walked into a room, and you could just feel the energy shift? Maybe there was someone in the room who wasn't saying a word, but their presence spoke volumes. That's silence in action. True silence is not passive, it is active, it is transformative, it changes the energy around us. Think about how silence impacts you on a personal level, when you take a moment of silence after a long day. What happens inside you? You begin to reconnect with your true self, you drop the armor of busyness, of distractions, of expectations, you step into the pure, untainted presence of who you really are. In the stillness, you may discover that there is no need to constantly chase after external validation, or to fight for control over every aspect of your life. Instead, you can simply be, you can simply rest in the awareness that you are already whole. The Buddha taught that the cause of suffering is attachment to our thoughts, our desires, our identities. But when we practice silence, we begin to loosen those attachments, we create space between ourselves and the patterns that keep us stuck, and in that space, freedom is born. A quiet mind does not mean a dull mind, it means a clear mind, a mind that is not clouded by confusion or overthinking, but a mind that is free to receive wisdom from the depths of its being. This is the true power of silence. It gives us the opportunity to reconnect with our inner truth. It gives us the space to make choices that align with our deepest values. In silence, we find clarity. In silence, we find peace, and ultimately, in silence, we find freedom. One of the most profound teachings in Buddhism is the practice of mindfulness, not just in meditation, but in our everyday life. When we are mindful, we are fully present in each moment. We are aware of the thoughts and feelings that arise, but we do not identify with them. We simply let them come and go, like clouds passing in the sky. And as we do this, we begin to experience the transformation of the mind. We move from a state of agitation and restlessness, to a state of calm, clarity, and peace. The transformative power of silence is not something that happens overnight, it is a gradual unfolding. A process of letting go of the noise, the distractions, and the clutter of the mind, and as we create more space for silence, we begin to feel the profound shift within. So, if you are feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or uncertain, try this: create a space for silence, allow yourself to sit with the stillness, let go of the need to control, let go of the need to do anything, just be, and in that silence, you will find the transformation you seek, because the power of silence isn't just about quieting the world around you, it's about quieting the world within you, and in that inner peace, true transformation begins. In the end, silence is not just an absence of sound, it is not just the absence of noise, of words, or of distractions. Silence is a presence that holds within it the keys to the deepest truths of existence, a presence that leads us on the path to awakening. The path of awakening is not a loud, noisy one, it is a quiet, humble journey, a journey that asks us to stop, to listen, and to be still. The Buddha's teachings point us to the silence within, to the silence that exists in the space between our thoughts, in the space between our desires, in the space between our fears. This silence is not empty, it is full of the wisdom that arises when we allow ourselves to be present. When we allow ourselves to simply be, in the silence of our own hearts, we begin to hear the truth of who we are, not as the person we think we should be, but as the person we truly are. This is the silence of wisdom. It is the silence that arises from deep awareness, from the cultivation of mindfulness. It is the silence that connects us to the heart of the universe, to the true essence of life itself. When we are truly awake, we are aware of the present moment, we are aware of the beauty in each breath, of the simple joys of being alive, of the sacredness in the ordinary. Awakening is not about escaping the world, it is not about fleeing from the noise or chaos. It is about embracing the world, but from a place of deep inner peace. When we awaken, we begin to see the world with new eyes, we see beyond the distractions, we see beyond the judgments, we see the interconnectedness of all things. In that silence, we find our true nature. In that silence, we come to understand the truth of impermanence, that all things, all experiences, are fleeting. We come to understand the truth of interdependence, that all beings are interconnected, that our actions have ripples beyond what we can see. In that silence, we awaken to the reality that all suffering is rooted in attachment to things, to thoughts, to identities, and in that awakening, we realize that we can be free from suffering. We can live without clinging, we can live with an open heart, free from fear, fully present to the beauty and impermanence of life. This is the true path of awakening. A path that begins in silence, and leads to a deep, lasting peace. The Buddha showed us the way through his silence, his presence, his deep awareness, and through his silence, he spoke the most profound truths that have ever been shared. He showed us that wisdom is not something that can be taught with words. It is something that must be experienced. It is something that must be felt. It is something that arises in the stillness of the heart, in the quiet awareness of the present moment. And so, we too must walk this path. We must learn to be still. We must learn to listen to the silence that exists within us and around us. We must learn to embrace the silence, not as a void, but as a presence that holds all the wisdom we need. As you continue on your own journey, remember that silence is not something you need to escape from, it is something you must learn to embrace, because in the silence, you will find yourself, you will find the truth of who you are, the truth of who we all are, interconnected, impermanent, and always awakening. The silence of wisdom is the path to true freedom, and in this freedom, you will find peace. So, let us walk together in silence, let us embrace the stillness, and let us awaken to the wisdom that lies within. If you found this journey into silence and wisdom inspiring, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more insights that can transform your life. Join us at Zen Buddhism Wisdom, and remember, the silence within you is the key to unlocking your greatest potential. So embrace it, and let your wisdom shine. You are capable of awakening to your fullest self. The path begins with you.